SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
So, hello everyone. So, with lecture 9 we are still continuing module 2, which is incorporating the environment in urban planning, development and management. So, in this particular lecture I am going to focus on the transition from sanitary to sustainable cities in West. So, how sustainable cities were conceived and perceived, and against which particular historical and political economic conjectures. So, these are going to be the theme of discussion for this particular lecture. So, the concepts that I will be covering and the route map that this particular presentation will follow is number 1. First, we would be focusing on the incorporation of sustainability in urban development. So, by this I mean that when Europe, and West and especially Europe, it entered into the post materialist society. So, by this I mean that during the post Second World War period, there was this post materialism where the urge was to thrive in better environments. So, that also led to major suburbanization, major suburbanizing processes in the West, and also the emergence of edge cities, but these processes of urbanization, suburbanization also had severe or tremendous socio-ecological implications. So, these socio-ecological implications actually facilitated the design and innovation of so called quote unquote smart and eco-friendly cities in order to address the question or the larger issue of sustainability. But how smart or how sustainable these cities were? So, this is something which we really need to critically interrogate. But before we engage ourselves in this critical exploration, first it will be important for us to go through some of the characteristics of these smart and so called sustainable urban discourses and designs, which include high density cities, compact cities, eco cities and zero carbon eco cities. So, in this presentation I would be familiarizing you with some of these very significant and much discussed upon urban designs and discourses. So, yes, as I mentioned that the post Second World War period, I mean it is an era where this search for sustainability it began. And which can be located or which can be placed within a pursuit of the post materialist Western society. So, there was a tremendous urge to thrive in better environments, which led to sprawling Western megalopolises, that is the emergence of edge cities, which spearheaded endless urbanization and activated the retreat of the rural, but it is also dotted with severe socio-ecological implications. So, like when suburbanization processes occurred, so there was a kind of a loss of the functional integrity of the urban core. So, we will see. So, what was the outcome of this retreat of the rural? So, what happened is that between 1950s and 1970s, rapid suburban expansion actually happened at the expense of the functional integrity of the urban core. And like during this particular period of time, that is in the immediate post Second World War period, the need was also to address the shortages in housing and other urban amenities. So, suburbanization to a great extent could accomplish or cater to some of these needs. But since 1970s, when this immediate economic boom faded, and when this particular period of immediate post-war destruction and disinvestment gradually it started getting slowed down, then several metropolitan regions or metropolitan areas also started facing stagnation. So, during this particular point of time, there was again a reinvigoration of interest. So, in urban core, and we find several social groups, several urban groups becoming more attracted to the inner urban. And immediately, since 1980s, the planners also started advocating for the cause of growth within, all right. So, we find urban planning processes to a great extent dedicated to critical reconstruction of traditional, compact and multifunctional urban rubric or urban fabric. And in his article mainly focusing on the compact cities, Schur, he argues that this reinvigoration of interest in urban core was a kind of, it can be considered as an ideal response to sustainability challenges. So, what we find is that all these plans or all these urban visions like high density cities, compact cities, eco cities and zero carbon cities, these can be considered as outcomes or consequences, consequences of this reinvigoration of interest in the inner urban growth within or the urban core. So, but before we just move on to these specific urban designs and urban plans, let me just touch upon very briefly the how the relationship between sustainability and urban development got established. So, what were the discussions which were going on in terms of this relationship between sustainability on one hand and urban development on the other. So, I think to a great extent this can be rooted within this concept, within the conceptualization and popularization of the concept of sustainable development, and the Brundtland report of 1992 that popularized this particular concept, and from here sustainable cities, this idea was derived. And several global organizations and initiatives also we find several global organization initiatives like Urban Environment Forum, UEF, ICLEI, LIFE, SCP and UN Habitat, which started discussing or addressing urban environmental issues. And in the back-to-back conventions of UN Habitat in 2002 in Nairobi and in Johannesburg, the relationship between urban and environment, the different, like how to trade off between economic growth, prosperity on one hand and environmental sustainability on the other in larger urban processes. So, these were the topic of discussions where different think tanks, different organizations and several groups and policy advocates, they came together and started brainstorming on this relationship between the urban and the environment. And like these are the 4 pillars of sustainable cities laid out by the United Nations. And so, this sustainable cities to a great extent entails the integration of these 4 pillars: social development, economic development, environment management, urban governance, and the integration of these 4 pillars, then also focusing on the economic and ecological costs of urbanization, emphasizing self-reliance of cities in terms of resource production and also resource absorption and waste generation. And also a whole lot of discussions were also there in terms of the development of compact energy efficient urban spaces. So, with this, now let us finally focus on the the characteristics or the features of these various urban designs and urban models, which are so called quote unquote like smart or sustainable models. This one, high density cities, though lot of discussions started flooding the western scene almost immediately after the Second World War, relating to the development and design of high density urban core or cities. But this particular book, which came out in 2011 by Ed Glaeser, and this book is Triumph of the City. Here Ed Glaeser, he propagated, he propounded and he supported this model of high density city like anything, and we can trace a lot of hue and cry relating to like the benefits and the costs of designing high density cities. So, the key idea of the Glazerian paradigm was that if cities grow in size and density, then of course, so there is an inversely proportional relationship between growth and density of cities on one hand and the overall per capita metabolic rate of cities. So, which means the rate at which cities consume resources like water, energy, etc. So, I mean, if we put it in simple terms or plain language, the idea is that bigger the cities, the more cost effective and greener they are. So, this is the key idea of high density cities. And Glazer also talked about like continued development of active transportation infrastructure and public transit, because these were very important in terms of linking the various nodes of cities to keep this density ratio very high. And of course, I mean, needless to say that Glazer critiqued urban sprawl, and he also like critiqued the NIMBY idea. So, the NIMBY movement which was going on. So, this NIMBY movement, not in my backward. So, where like several organizations and mainly some grassroots organizations also protested against large scale construction or large scale development projects, for example, multi-storied buildings etc., because the argument was that they were unaffordable, and they also kind of facilitated or promoted social inequity. But Glazer, of course, he was anti NIMBY, and he was also against suburbanization processes, because according to him the suburbanization processes were not efficient and neither affordable at all. And he had lot of like he had lot of hope on cities, and like cities provided a lot of optimism according to Glazer. And for example, Okejo, he reviewed this particular book and Glazer's key ideas, where he says that according to Glazer, not only are cities humanity's greatest invention, but that our fate as a civilization is intertwined with how we develop cities. So, whole lot of hope, whole lot of optimism, whole lot of desires and aspirations surrounding the urban, or more specifically urban core and core cities. So, the Glazerian paradigm also placed the misplaced fear of heights. So, for example, here we can also talk about the differences between the Jacobian and the Glazerian paradigm. So, between Jane Jacobs, who was she is the author of this masterpiece called The Death and Life in American Cities. So, Jane Jacobs versus Edward Glazer. So, while on one hand Jacobs, though she talked about mixed zoning processes or mixed zoning land use fostering street life, but Jane Jacobs also she wanted to protect the shorter and smaller and older buildings, because to her these buildings should be protected, and like multi-storied buildings were unaffordable. So, that was her idea. But Glazer attacked this particular idea, saying that if for example in a particular space there is a building, an old building which is 2-storied or at best 3-storied, and in the same space if you have a multi-storied building which is like 40-storied. So, I mean, to a great extent it shows that that the affordability question is better met by this 40-storied building occupying or acquiring the same space. So, his idea, Glazerian idea, is that by restricting real estate, you actually halt development, and you also actually make the prices of land higher. So, and he gave a lot of examples from the different cities having there is a history of skyscrapers like New York, Chicago, Manhattan, etc. And yes, so he promoted tall buildings, because to him that tall buildings are greener the sprawl and they foster social capital and creativity, and they are icons of better efficiency in urban core areas. So, compact city is something which is again another urban design or urban model, which actually owes back to this George Danzig and Thomas L. Satie, who coined this particular terminology called compact cities in long back, like in 1973. And like in 1980s 90s, this compact city idea became very popular. So it was kind of a backlash against post-war urban planning. And there is a big quote from Apple. So Apple, who has done a lot of research, exhaustive research on compact cities, and he also formulated the different characteristics of this compactness. So Apple, this is an important quote, this is a significant quote from Apple, which is also cited in Schuer, again Schuer focusing on compact cities. So here the idea is that the dispersed expansion of settlement areas, particularly at the fringes of urban regions, and the ever more pronounced segregation of different land uses not only threatens open space, increases social costs for urbanization and transport, leads to growing energy consumption, air and noise pollution, but generally endangers European urban culture and the associated capabilities and achievements of social and cultural integration of tolerance and responsibility for the common good. So, so as the dispersed settlements are very much loaded with so many disadvantages, so the idea was to kind of discourage dispersed settlements, discourage this dispersed expansion of the urban, and in turn focus on the compactness of urban spaces. So these are the various characteristics. I talked about Apple, and Apple he lays out various characteristics of compactness for compact cities. So the first characteristic being like minimum density, and here it is little contradictory. We would look into it in our next presentation when we discuss some of the criticisms of these various urban environmental models. But so minimum density basically to kind of ensure the viable user friendly public transit, and also neighborhood retail and other services within walking distance. So that is the idea. The second characteristic is multifunctionality through integration of land uses. So it provides like a lot of it ensures pedestrian activities. So in streets, so pedestrian activities, which means that so through this a sense of publicness can be fostered, could be fostered. So the idea is that in order to foster a sense of publicness, and in order to kind of ensure a social cohesion, more and more pedestrian activities are encouraged. Then concentration of development in nodes, so which has so like cities having both like this monocentric and polycentric features, and each node striking a balance of housing, employment, and other facilities to kind of like ensure more shared or sharing activities pursued locally. Transformation of urban mobility. So of course, like non-motorized mobility is encouraged to a great extent, and replacement of through replacement of vehicular traffic. And I think this number 4, it has like a lot of overlaps with number 1, which is like minimum density. So keeping everything within walking distance. Followed by like the 5th characteristic of compact cities or compactness, congruence of spatial functional structure and public transit system. So yes, public transit system again being very important, and this particular feature again you can see like it is oriented towards future development around like already existing transport system, but also like a better plan for serving the otherwise underserved areas. So that is met through the congruence of spatial functional structure and public transit system. And finally station areas. So like nodes nodes and like station areas as catalysts for development. So railway nodes and these railway stations, for example, the railway stations also taking care of like internal nodes, ensuring self-containment, and also a plan for interlinking the internodal system, which is just outside the internal nodes. So, both, I mean, taking care of both the internal nodes and also interlinking the different nodes together. So, these are the features of compactness or compact cities. So, with this we move on to the more like more how do I say, more technologically enabled or ICT enabled ubiquitous eco-city. So, it seems like ubiquitous is a kind of a heuristic term based on ICT, information communication technology, and the idea is that any service anywhere and anytime through ICT devices. So, you can actually access any service anywhere anytime. So, that is the key slogan, that is the key propaganda for ubiquitous UCT, anytime, anywhere and any service through ICT, through technology. So, real time computation of data to deal with disasters, yes, it's very I mean it has a very robust and sophisticated ICT embedded in it. So, and artificial intelligence playing a huge role. So, real time computation of data I mean is again one key feature for these ubiquitous UCTs used for various purposes and also to deal with hazards or natural disasters. And this ubiquitous eco-cities, it's quite popular in countries like Korea, right, and like during the 1997, after the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Korea started adopting national strategies to design and develop these eco-cities. And in 2008 finally this idea or this I mean this ubiquitous eco-city project was launched, and now like Korea has almost 64 projects designed on the basis of this on these parameters. So, the idea again or the key features are like it's eco-friendly, of course, eco-friendly, energy saving and less GHG emissions. So, there are different like devices through which this there is a lot of control is exerted on GHG emission. So, for example, devices like automatic water air pollution monitor system, smart grid for electricity and water distribution for energy conservation and recycled water supply, smart cards to rationalize citizens' energy consumption. So, very interestingly, Seoul also use this eco mileage cards. So, if you use these cards, you also get some discounts in utility bills, etc. Sustainable transportation and green cards. So, there is a tie-up also, there are tie-ups between the Ministry of Environment in Korea and private companies like Samsung or Hyundai, where they also provide discounts for buying eco-friendly equipment and hybrid cars. Green transport, that is again ICT embedded bicycles and green communication. So, we are now aware of this green communication out of compulsion, because now as gross meetings and meeting people physically is not being possible due to the pandemic. We have now like radically and very fast we have moved on to this like green communication as a compulsory option. So, coping as a compulsory option, but in ubiquitous eco-cities this green communication is already an inherent component for this so far as this particular design is concerned. So, green communication through televideo based conference technologies like Skype, FaceTime, etc., etc. And this is the final model which I have selected out of several other models. These four, I thought you should know about these four models because they are being debated upon, they are being discussed upon like anything. And in the next presentation, I am also going to discuss some of the limitations and some of the challenges in implementing these urban designs. So, zero carbon eco-city, this for example, this particular concept of eco-city, it was first popularized in this particular book called Eco-City, Berkeley. So, this was a book on Berkeley, building cities for a healthy future. So, and this book was written by Richard Register, which came out in 1987. And it talks about so how why zero carbon and how zero carbon. So, it talks about the use of both active and passive devices which would enable zero emissions, so zero GHG emissions. so there will be almost, I mean, no GHG emission. So, so that's the whole idea, that's the key idea. And as the emission, as the emission rate would be 0, so as this is 0 carbon ecocity, so of course it would lead to the generation of clean and renewable energy. So now this idea of 0 carbon ecocity, we can see the proliferation or dissemination of this idea in some posh cities. For example, this map, you know, this map exactly it shows the location of this 0 carbon ecocities. But one very unique example is, for example, Masdar in UAE. So, Masdar, you know, it's like the normal, the general temperature, average temperature, like it's very hot, you know, it's hot and dry, where the average temperatures remains like 40 degree centigrade. So, what happens here is that, you know, the passive devices are used, and also there is a lot of reliance on the traditional urban designs, again, which to a great extent fosters compactness. So, the traditional compact urban design fostered by the by Arab or Arabic countries. So, like diagonal street orientation, courtyards, wind catchers, window blinds, shaded colonnades, mixed land use, etc. And then like active devices, like for example, renewable energy based tools like PV power plant, concentrated solar power, wind turbines, geothermal technologies, internal transportation based on electric light rapid transit or personal rapid transit. So, these are all these remain an integral part of the city of Masdar, where Masdar absolutely depends on the so called renewable energy based technologies or tools. And again, lot of emphasis is given on waste management, because this is the 0 carbon eco-city. So, these are the models which I wanted to discuss, and these models, like with a lot of hope and optimism being envisioned within the changing political economic context or historical context. And in our next presentation, we will see that how far these cities could actually kind of address the sustainability issue in the real sense of the term. So, how smart were they, or how smart they are, or how sustainable they are? We can only address this question by critically and in detail looking into some of the other like implications of the implementation of these models in in some urban spaces. And also it is important for us to know to know or to unravel insights that have come down to us by people who have kind of criticized these urban models or discourses in terms of different questions, social questions like equity, justice, etc. And I think like all of us know by now that how equity, justice, these are all very fundamental questions related to urban environmental sustainability. So, yes, these are some of the important references. I would very much encourage you to go through this particular reference by Hassan and Lee, because it is a comprehensive coverage of some of these models. So, I think the concluding points or the key highlights can be this, that the post materialist WW2, that is World War II context, facilitated the search for urban sustainability, and we have seen that how like the socio-political implications of suburbanization processes also facilitated the design and innovation of so called smart and sustainable cities on the basis of nurturing inner density of urban core, compactness, like eco-friendly design, zero carbon ideas, etc. So, 1990s also is an important watershed period when which provoked the world to think about the relationship between sustainability and urban development, because sustainable cities concept was derived from the concept of sustainable development, which was popularized by the Brundtland report of 1992. Several global organizations emerged which started addressing urban environmental questions, and then this eco-friendly urban discourses and models like high density cities, compact cities, eco cities, zero carbon cities focused on the inner urban compact and multifunctional urban fabric with the aim of reducing GHG emission. So this is these were the grand plans, but then we will see in our next presentation how the materialization of these plans in some urban spaces actually also led to the emergence of some problems and challenges, because these problems and challenges are also inherent components of this otherwise very sophisticated technology enabled urban environmental models and discourses. Thank you.